when you're looking at creative, you need to make a decision. Is it 1/10 human and robot? And it had that picture of like a barely a human and 9/10 of it was a robot.
Sure.
Or is it more, and what is the decision you're making based on the value, what you're creating?
You're listening to Built to Convert, the podcast where growth-minded marketers, founders, and creators come to level up. No hype, no guesswork, just bold insights that drive results. Let's go.
Hey everyone, I'm Tyler Lane, founder of Session Interactive and host of Built to Convert. On this show, I sit down with growth-minded founders, marketers, and business leaders to explore how strategy, analytics, and smart marketing decisions drive real revenue-focused growth. This episode is brought to you by Session Interactive, the digital agency that helps brands turn complex data into clear, actionable strategy. From SEO and analytics to paid media and content, we partner with growth-focused teams to solve digital challenges and drive meaningful results. You can learn more about us at sessioninteractive.com. All right, guys. So excited today. Everyone says that about podcasts, right? Or excited for the guests. But today I've got Mark Mitton. Mark leads AI transformation team at Gravity Global and oversees their mid-market segment. Mark works at the intersection of marketing, automation, and innovation, helping companies understand and apply AI to drive real-world results. I'm excited to dig in to how AI is evolving and what practical steps mid-market brands can take today to get ahead. Mark, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. No. And just for everyone, Mark's been an amazing resource, and I consider Mark a mentor of mine. I've been lucky enough to have him in my life and to influence business and a variety of things. So excited to dive in here. Mark, let's kind of go over just a little bit of history about yourself within marketing. And you've got an impressive background, so maybe kind of a high-level overview would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. I got my MBA in international business, and I kind of initially thought I was going to go into finance, but as my career would have it, I started getting exposed to marketing. And the more I was exposed to it, in fact, I was leading product marketing for a startup that was doing building data centers in Latin America. And the head of marketing kept coming to me for ideas. And I thought, well, this is interesting. This is weird. And then as luck would have it, I very soon after that ended up running marketing for a telecom company in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so that really set my footing on the marketing trajectory. That was on the client side. I moved back to Denver and eventually kind of found myself kind of wanting more out of my career and feeling like I wasn't quite achieving as much as I thought I should. And so I felt like it was maybe time to put up or shut up if I didn't feel like my career is going where I wanted it to. And that eventually led to me forming an agency, my own agency called Carbonate. And these were the days where digital was new. And so we called our agency, a digital agency. I don't think people do that anymore because everything's digital, which we'll probably do that with AI, right? We're an AI forward agency. We'll probably stop saying that too, just because it's sort of expected. But anyway, started this agency and we really focused on brand and web and all things digital. And, it was an amazing run. We built that agency out to about 60, 70 people in total, built out an office in Vietnam that was part of our agency here based in Denver. And, kept ratcheting up the types of clients we could work with. And we're pretty proud of what we're doing, but eventually kind of felt like we're hitting a ceiling. And right around then is when my current company approached us and asked to acquire us. And so I'm one of those surprising founders that was acquired that stuck around. I've been here now for a few years, quite a fair amount of years at Gravity Global. And, I think one of the joys for me personally too, is I've always tried to be a digital native. And I'm hoping I'm still living that out with this new revolution we're seeing with AI and how it's impacting marketing. So,
yeah, I love that, Mark. Great overview. Yeah, that's one thing I've always been impressed with you too, just being on the precipice and that level of curiosity. And I think that is just the word curiosity has been massive. I recall many of our conversations in the past around AI and just innovations as a whole, and you really taking that in stride. Whereas other founders, right, maybe in the past would just be maybe intimidated or stray away from that and not want to go that course at all. So, hey, hats off to you to really embrace everything.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. I mean, I've sometimes thought about, why I've taken this pathway. And actually, it's weird. I would go all the way back to my childhood where, my parents were putting, this Apple, what was it, Apple 2GS or something, putting computers in our homes when I was a little kid. And I think that early exposure sort of made me, bizarrely growing up in the 80s, a digital native, which, nobody really think of anybody from the 80s as being a digital native, but I would really credit that as sort of the beginnings of it. And then, I'm later in my career now, and I think that one of the hazards you have in marketing is that it is sort of a young person sport, right? People get exposed to new ideas, social media, new technologies. And so, as you've been in the career for a while, I personally believe that if you don't embrace the new technologies, and like you said, I love that word curiosity. If you don't, then you have the potential to find yourself a bit sort of sidelined, because technology is so driving the innovation we're seeing in this space. I mean, the change that I have seen in the last 25 years being in marketing is ridiculous. I mean, unfathomable. I never would imagine I would wake up and have the tools we have today in marketing.
Yeah. And that's a key word there, just the tool component, right? Because a lot of this is that, quick fix or certain things. And, you bring the breadth of experience. Yeah, now there's tools, but like creating a strategy to utilize these tools correctly. And it's not going to necessarily take people's jobs away right away, right? But you need to use those tools correctly in order to really empower change. All right, let's jump in here. So what does AI transformation really look like inside of a marketing team today, Mark? I know you're dealing with quite a few clients these days. I know you guys mid-market and larger mid-market brands that you fixate on. What are you seeing with those brands, and what are you guys bringing to the table? Broad question there. We'll start from there, and we'll get deeper.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler, you say, what does AI transformation mean? I think that nobody knows.
I know.
I mean, there are some obvious things that we're seeing happening, but where this all ends up, I think, is a bit of a mystery. And so, from our standpoint, my standpoint, my feeling is you need to engage, you need to trial, you need to try, you need to expose, you need to push, you need to you need to have endless curiosity and energy around it, because there's not right now sort of like, here's the exact pathway, right? This is happening so quickly. I think if you looked in the past when it came to marketing being digitally transformed, there was sort of a playbook, right? It was like, you could kind of look at, it was happening slow enough that you could say, okay, here's the new trends and the things I need to pursue, right? I need a website that performs. I need to do SEO. I need to do conversion rate optimization. I need to understand my analytics about this. I need to maybe get HubSpot on board if I'm a B2B company. Sure. And there was sort of this like playbook that you could follow because it was happening so slowly. I think we're seeing things happen 3 or 4 or 5 times faster than they did with the digital transformation in marketing. And so that just means that, there isn't sort of this ability to just go out and say like, oh, this is exactly how you transform an organization from an AI standpoint. I mean, in the last 2 years where we've really paid attention to it at Gravity, there's been so much change in the AI tools that it's like you wake up, a week later and go, oh, well, that tool we thought we were going to use is no longer relevant. Such and such has innovated here, and so, wow, maybe we should be embracing this. And so I think that's one of the challenges, is that the technology is so dynamic. And I think the only way to win is for an organization to be just as dynamic as the technology.
Sure. Are you finding clients are embracing the innovation that you guys are disseminating? Or are you finding they're intimidated? Are you finding they're excited about testing, or they're hesitant? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of both. I actually think, man, it's such an interesting question you're asking, because I know on our side as an agency, we feel like it's embrace or die. And it is, though, a little bit of a tightrope that you're walking, because there's certain things that are being enabled by AI that are going to disrupt the typical, agency client business relationship, and also just disrupt a way a marketing team, is working, on the client side. And so I think that you have to have an openness as an agency to the fact that the what you're going to deliver in 2 years may look different than it did yesterday. And then also have the confidence to believe that even though AI might take over some things that you're doing today, that there is sort of this almost elastic, infinite demand for what marketing can do, right? And so sometimes people worry about, oh, if I embrace this technology that's going to help me write this press release. Well, I write press releases. That's 30% of my job. What does that mean to me?
Sure.
And I think we have to have the confidence that, there's almost always been sort of a lid on how much marketing we could do based on just human capital and technology capital or implemented capital. And now this really allows us to do more. The typical company you're talking to where they say, oh, we've got plenty of campaigns running. Oh, we have plenty of content getting out the door. No, that's not really the answer. Like well, we do the best we can. We prioritize where we think it would have the most impact, but gosh, it sure be nice if we could do A or B or C or D. And so my hope is that these tools and technology are going to allow, teams to become small but mighty.
Sure.
What they couldn't do before, they now can do. So, yeah.
No, it's a great point. I think we're experiencing that, the level of intimidation, but it's essentially pivoting it and making kind of essentially supercharge yourself and make you that much more efficient, augment certain aspects, the mundane tasks, the not trite, but the tactics that really can be glossed over or, don't need as much attention, perhaps, can use AI. So yeah, really good point to update that.
Yeah, I think so. What we're seeing on the programming, right, the software development front, is that so I've got some friends, and we got our own software development team. And what we're hearing is that in the past, if you were in software development, even kind of in a senior role, you might spend 80% of your time programming and 20% of your time strategizing. And that has now flipped, where now you're spending 80% of your time strategizing and 20% of your time actually programming. And AI has made that possible. And so I think there's something very analogous into marketing, how marketing teams are going to run, where we're going to be doing less of sort of that doing of putting out those assets or, and verifying those assets and all the logistics and execution that goes with it. There'll probably be less time spent on that and more time on, what should we be doing? What really is our ideal customer? What does an effective, PR campaign really look like? Mm-hmm. And so I think we're going to see a similar sort of flip in marketing where it's really going to push people to start being more strategic. There'll be less of those just sort of doing roles and more of those thinking roles where you're orchestrating and strategizing a much more robust marketing program.
No, that's really interesting. We mentioned tools a few different times now, and you mentioned one of those misconceptions, or to a certain extent, it's like you wake up and it's changed entirely, or that individual tool is no longer relevant. What are some other misconceptions that people have, or that you see out there that clients are maybe unaware of or are aware of around tools specifically associated with AI?
Let's just go to the models themselves, because they are the foundation of this revolution. And what I hear both within our company sometimes and outside of the company is there's sometimes some misconceptions about how these tools work. And then those misconceptions are stopping people from experimenting and adopting. And this misconception might have come from maybe they tried ChatGPT, or Claude or something 2 or 3 years ago, and they saw certain limitations of it, or they saw something in the press about it. But those misconceptions and those fears, or those, ways of sort of, limiting what people think is possible, I think are actually very dangerous, both to an individual's career and also to the possibilities. And I'll just do a side note here. I really see, if you look in the last year and a half, the number of jobs marketing jobs that are advertised, the number of marketing jobs that are advertised where AI is mentioned in that job posting has skyrocketed, especially in the last 6 months. And so when, some really interesting thinkers out there, I listen to a lot of podcasts about this and some great thinkers around AI. And one of them is thinking, something they posited, I thought was super interesting, is that we as marketers, when we go to look for our next job, they won't just say, what are your capabilities around AI? They'll say, what are the AI models that you're bringing with you? What is the training that you've done?
Sure.
And so I can foresee a day where it's like, hey, I'm joining this team. And by the way, I have already pre-trained a social media module, a strategy module, a brand module. and they've been with me for 4 years and know exactly, I've, created all this intelligence around them. So when you hire me, you're also, I'm bringing with me these specially trained models. So, I mean, that's sort of kind of crazy in future. I think it's somewhat enabled by the recent change by ChatGPT to enable permanent memory. And so, and that's a great example of how things are changed so quickly. They enabled permanent memory just a couple of weeks ago, and then I went, wait a minute, what does this mean? Well, permanent memory means that, wow, maybe now when I go sign up for a job, they're not just going to interview me; they're going to interview my, my models, that I've trained, my GPTs that I've trained.
Yeah, no, that's amazing insight, and just and things for everyone to consider. Absolutely. Let's do a kind of a scenario here without giving away some of the secret sauce at Gravity Global. But let's say you want a nice mid-market client. What's kind of the evaluation process, and then before, and then during, and then the process for getting them started with AI? Let's say they've adopted a little bit of it here and there. A lot of companies, right? Hey, we're recording meetings. We're utilizing Copilot. We're utilizing Gemini, depending on their email service provider, to a certain extent. But are you going through and evaluating all those components and then saying, hey, we're going to create individual GPTs for certain product areas or certain service lines? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, Tyler, great question, because this is exactly what we are thinking about every day at Gravity. Is how do we create a much more powerful, robust, and successful client relationship enabled by AI? And so, man, you just touched on some really, interesting things. One of them is that we are looking at a way that for every client we work with, we have GPT or GPTs that support that relationship. So this is not a novel idea, but imagine, for example, you might be working with, I'll just throw out a company that's out there, Chipotle.
Sure.
Well, Chipotle has a specific brand. They have a specific, voice and tone, and they have a history, and they have,
guardrails
for what they should and shouldn't say, and they have FDA things they can't. I don't know. You can think of regulatory things that must be infused into this. And so, one of the things that you really think about is, can you now create a GPT for every client, or companies could do this for themselves, right? Where nothing goes out the door without it being reviewed by that GPT. Whether it's even like, what type of grammar your company wants to use, right? How you use capitalization, all of that's loaded in. And this is sort of an interesting, I mentioned that you use it to verify. So I think people often think about using, the models for generating content, but actually what we're finding is one of the most exciting ways to use it is to proof, edit, and also query the models for where your gaps are. Yep. So, I've come up with this marketing piece. I'm really proud of it. And instead of just saying, going to them, just putting that out, you would go to one of the models and say, hey, based on everything you've been trained on, where does this go astray? What's missing? What are the gaps? So that idea of using models for what are the gaps, I think is huge, because we as humans develop blind spots, right? We choose a pathway. All right, we're excited about this campaign. This is the way we're going to go. We're targeting these people. And then we just sort of get those blinders on. And so this is one of the power of creating these GPTs for a brand, is that now you can go back to it and say, like, wait, what did I miss? What are my blind spots? Where have I gone astray? So both for generation and then validation, I think, is a really powerful way to use it. So anyway, your question was, how are we thinking about, using this with clients? I think that's, you touched on that idea. That is, I think, one of the most powerful ways of doing it. We at Gravity are looking for ways where we can take existing tools and basically automate the population of a custom GPT for our clients. So imagine imagine for a client, you do a bunch of brand research, right? You do interviews, focus groups. Sure. Well, all of that would go into a GPT and constantly inform everything you're doing. So that's one way. I think, in general, there's things that we do that are sort of transparent behind the scenes. Like if we use a GPT, say we're, for example, coming up with taglines, right? If we use a GPT to help us ideate, we don't really expose that to the client. It's just part of our process. There's actually a really funny video out there that says, stop saying that you used AI, right? I mean, if you think, 5 years ago, I didn't excuse my work and say, oh, by the way, I did a Google search. So, hey, It's just expected. Of course you did a good
Sure.
research. You
Of
didn't,
course
I'd
you
be
do. Yeah,
disappointed in you. And so I think we're going to get a little bit there with using AI, where it's just sort of like it's part of your work and you don't excuse it or say it's less than because you used AI. It's the assumption is it's greater than. So some of those things that we do are sort of just transparent. We're trying to create more efficiency. One of the most powerful ways you can use it is for early ideation, right? When you're just trying to explore ideas. And so there's a lot of different ways we use it from that standpoint. I think you asked how we're introducing AI to our clients, and certainly we know our clients, also companies across the board are starting to use
Sure.
AI.
Yeah.
But it's not, we're not explicitly like walking into their doors and saying like, hey, how can we transform your entire organization from an AI standpoint, right? I'm sure there's people that do that, that consult on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, I would say that just the exposure, the conversation we're having is inspiring some of our clients to do more. Clients have seen what we're doing, and I've had some of our CMOs call me and say, "Yeah, I'd like to have more exposure to what you guys are doing. What are you seeing?" And so we welcome that. Like, we view this as a rising tide. But an AI investment on both sides raises both boats, kind of a thing. And so we are certainly not going to resist this in any way. Our feeling is like, let's do this together. Let's figure out this world together. So
it opens up, it seems, Mark, it just opens up these just immersion opportunities. Like, for example, for us, not to speak about ourselves, but like, hey, we're engaging a client on SEO, right? That already is incredibly broad. But when we start creating GPTs, when we start getting deeper into certain things, there just brings up so much more immersion opportunities around efficiencies of like how we're doing research and how we're implementing. And then, there's use cases across the board that are outside of our traditional scope. And I think that's just like the benefit and the value you can start providing clients. Being very difficult to scope certain things, but hey, that's curious. I'm using that, or there's an applicable use case over there, and it's not necessarily directly related to SEO, but we could use that. And I think that's where a lot of agencies, if they don't adapt to that immersion level, that value add outside of their individual channel, I think there's going to be some pushback, because at least what I see is not every agency should be full service by any means. And we're not going to be like that. I think you guys are to a certain extent, but ultimately is what is the value? What can you bring to the table, and utilizing some of these tools with your combined strategy that is going to be immersive across the board. Hopefully that's the idea. Right. So, so a lot of things, so that comes up for me also. You're a creative guy, right? You bring that knowledge, that acumen, that experience. Talk to me about how the tools and your strategies, your own prompt process has evolved in generating creative. And, is that really similar to the content generation component? There always needs to be a human involved. Talk to me about creative for image generation, testing, things like that. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go negative for a minute on this, and
please,
just share a moment, which I think it is I would say probably most creatives have had this moment. My daughter's an artist, and she's had many moments where she resents the fact that we now have these, artificial intelligences that are competing for this thing that humans have always owned, creativity. And one can argue semantics, how creative the models are not, but there's no doubt that what they produce looks creative, right? It looks somewhat similar to what humans do. Now, I'm not trying to say there's not a human element that's very special that still exists, but they are certainly infringing on what used to be, own terrain by humans in a big way. And my own experience was, I remember we had this project, and a couple of times in my career, I kind of jokingly created a little rap song about what was happening, just a goofy thing you don't really see in the workplace. And I'd done that a couple of times, and I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to go to Chat GPT now that it's here to create a rap song for me for this situation that I was going to share with my colleagues, right? And when it created it, it was so damn good. And I felt diminished. I felt sidelined. I thought, wow, this thing just did. If I had done this myself and sent it out, everybody would have been like, wow, Mark, that's hilarious. You did that. You're so creative, right? There would have been that moment of like, oh, that's so cool. You did that, right? And then I thought, oh, if I send this out, they'll probably assume it's ChatGPT, it's not me. And, they might think it's funny, but, and I could have done it myself. I could have spent, 30 minutes wasting company time, making something funny. And,
Sure.
but it was, I think everyone has those moments. If you are in any type of job, even, a strategic job where it's like, oh, wow, this thing just did something that I do that I consider special. And so I think that moment is a little bit of a challenge. Like, I think it's to say just right off, you can say, you can see that I am a big AI fan and champion.
Sure.
But I am not unaware of the fact also that this creates some discomfort for things that we are used to as marketers and creatives and human beings. Like that is out there.
Yep.
But I do think though that you have to get beyond that moment, and you have to start thinking about your role in the world as a little different. And it doesn't mean that I don't create that rap song, and that my daughter doesn't create art, right, that blows people's minds. It doesn't mean that we don't do those things. But I think in the marketing world, you need to start making some decisions about where do the humans become involved. I would say there's this great chart I saw the other day that basically said it had a picture of a robot and a human, and it said, when you're looking at creative, you need to make a decision. Is it 1/10 human and robot? And it had that picture of like barely a human, and 9/10 of it was a robot.
Sure.
Or is it more, and what is the decision you're making based on the value what you're creating? And I do think that there's no doubt that there are scenarios where you want this to be mostly human. There's just something that AIs can't do, and that is experiences and storytelling. I mean, it's kind of what's happening on this podcast right now. Well, we haven't told a lot of stories, but an AI can't include an anecdote, right? Like, oh, I experienced this today, or I felt this today, right? And so I think first there's just that human element that can be really powerful. I mean, you think about a blog post that has, maybe the moment I just shared, how I felt when I first, saw AI taking away something that I did in the past I thought was special. That relational piece of it is huge, and AI can't take that from us.
Yep.
And I also think that, even though they are getting smarter and smarter from a thinking and strategic front, you really do need that human touch. That's what makes it unique. It's special. There's still very unique experiences we have and perspectives. And so the way I would think about your content is there are times where it's just like, let's let the AI do this. This is just churn and burn, right? We know exactly what this is. Before it was a rote task anyway. Let's have, be 20% human and 80% AI. And then there is, oh, wait, no. This is a, we'll just throw out an idea like this is a monumental marketing piece that we really want to, put out there, right? Or this is a post on LinkedIn that we really want people to relate to, our CEOs can put out there. And so I think you just got to start making decisions about what that blend is. But I would say, I'm really nervous about these tools that are coming out that basically say, just set up all your marketing agents, give them hooks into all of your social media and campaigns, and let them go.
I know.
I mean, for now, I feel like the only place that would work is a really small business that would, you're a small, auto repair shop. It's like, okay, yeah, sign up for one of those agent things and let them do it. But man, for any companies that are larger than that and trying to make some meaning in the world, I'm really nervous about this idea of just everything being automated in a world where it's just basically AIs, are talking to AIs, right?
Yeah,
I put out content on LinkedIn, another AI read it. That AI said, oh, this is interesting, we should respond to it. And away we went. Like, that seems a bit dystopian that we get to that place. And I don't think that's the right way for this all to arrive. I think we've got to make sure that human element is in it somewhere.
Mm-hmm. No, I couldn't agree more with every aspect. The automation components, the AI evaluation, content, creative. I mean, I was just at an agency con, a local conference here in Denver, and it was quite obvious how much humans still need to be involved as a stopgap, as a just gut check from a lot of the points you just brought up. It also brings up something. This has happened years ago when AI really wasn't a thing. I remember doing a lot of CRO work with one of a lead designer at an agency. And it was obviously about improving the conversion. I remember the designer just stating, like, Tyler, it's like, but I want to, this feels like it's hindering my creative abilities. because you're
Yeah.
giving that person all of the data. And from a conversion standpoint, it didn't have to look sexy. It just had to convert. Right. And I had to really educate them and collaborate with them just to state like, okay, here are the client's goals, right? They want things to look and feel amazing, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's around revenue. That's what they're really fixated on. There are other aspects within the site that we can insert our creative capabilities and ensure that we have as much strategy components as possible. But this particular area, this cart focus, this needs to be set up in a way that is ultimately going to be as efficient as possible. Again, not super sexy. And it was an interesting conversation with that creative because they got it and they wanted to do right by the client, of course, but they also wanted to be creative. And I think they could fixate on those other areas. And I think also to you, Mark, someone posted the other day, Barry Adams, SEO advocate, list the bell curve of quality. And it was really around content generation. And famously, content generation with LLMs has been like one of the worst use cases, right? Because it'll get you there, ideate, but actual full content generation without a human, not a good idea. And I think that's a lot of the things that you're mentioning as well. But the quality, right? The content is coming out at a ridiculous clip, but the actual clear differentiating human component is becoming less and less. So it's like, focus in on that, and that's that you're going to be able to differentiate yourselves, so to speak. So
yeah. Well, and I love your story about that conversation you had with the creative. And I recently heard somebody say in marketing, it's only creative if it converts. And I think that's sometimes hard for our artists. And we love our artists in this industry, and we want them to be who they are and into art for art's sake and all of those things. But it is sometimes a little bit of, it's almost like we're killing their souls when you say that. It's like, wait, what? It only comes down to the almighty dollar? Come on. That's not, yeah. But I mean, that really is, that is the mindset you should have in marketing,
One of the intimidation aspects or skepticism, trepidations, I was talking about this in the last podcast, honestly, is around kind of the moral aspects, the ethical aspects. We worked with a client for a little while, a startup that was doing sound and music creation for high-end luxury car brands, Bentley, Audi, and creating kind of ambient, but then custom AI related music, right?
Yeah.
And in certain cases, there's not in certain cases, a lot of cases, there's ethical issues, there's moral issues. Talk to us about that, of how you're educating clients. Is that verbiage, wording within your MSAs? Like how are you? How are you working on that? Because you're getting a lot of data, and some people say, "Oh, I'm not getting PII," but you're recording a lot. Everyone's recording everything these days, right? And uploading that, utilizing AI. So things are bound to be maybe in slight violation. I'm curious your thoughts. How do you avoid that? Things are changing like crazy. How do you educate clients around it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like you're almost touching on two things, which is there's just this whole gray area around what can actually be used from a trademarking, from a copywriting standpoint. What is actually safe to use when it comes to using AIs for generating content that gets used in the marketplace. And then also this idea that we are just generating an insane amount of data, and there's just sort of like almost this intimacy now that is being, our whole lives are being recorded, right, and documented. So I mean, on the second question, one of the things I think in Gravity that we've had to be relentless about is just upping our game when it comes to security. I mean, we are locked down tight, and I think we have to, because we are working with clients in a broad spectrum. We do have some of their data. We try to avoid having data where we can, just because of that risk. But I think, first of all, you've just got to have, and this is no news to anybody. You've got to have an amazing, security policy and team and structure and practices in place. Because those things will take down, companies, businesses, relationships, right? And so I don't think AI just increases the risk of that, right? And so it's just that has to continue. I think on the first question around, what can we actually use? What is, that I think we're going to probably wait for the courts and legislatures to really get clear on that. But For us, it is we did change all of our contracts to reflect this new world and acknowledge that we're using AI in the process. We still have to, make sure that everything we use, we feel confident can be defensible, can be owned by our clients. And so it's really easy when you're still using it for ideation and drafts and things like that, right? I mean, in the past, for example, when we did a shoot for, we have, a lot of B2C clients. And if we did a shoot for them, before when you're starting to plan for that shoot, there is a lot of labor that can go into sort of ideating. And now the fact that we can fast ideate and just say like, hey, I want to see this motorcycle and I want to see it in 25 different environments and 35 different angles with fully built images, and then go through all of those and go like, oh, these three look great. And now they're all, I mean, that could have cost you, $10,000, $20,000 and $30,000 with an artist, and could have taken, 6, 7, 8 weeks. And now the fact you can do that in just a couple of days is super exciting. Mm-hmm. So that is pretty low risk. But then there are these gray areas of what you're going to be using externally. One of the cool things is there are tools out there. A lot of the companies that are providing, AI embedded capabilities are indemnifying you in their use in the marketplace. In other words, they're saying like, if you generate a video for my platform or
Sure.
or an image, we are saying that it is defensible, that you can own that image and it does not violate other people's, intellectual property. And so that gives a lot of comfort. I was actually on a call with a vendor last week, and they were telling us that that's what they were giving to us. And so I think it's fantastic. I would look for tools like that, because you as a company don't want to take on that risk. Especially if you're a larger company, you would rather have it. You can say like, oh, well, I'm using Adobe, and Adobe has said this and this, and they've indemnified it. So it goes back to Adobe to defend, the IP rights on that image or video, whatever it is you're using.
Sure. No, that's really helpful and good to know too. I think as people are out there, they're uploading large data sets. They're, maybe not getting permission in certain cases. I think just being aware of that and having your own standards and your own practice, your own SOPs around your security policies, et cetera, really important component. Excellent. So, Mark, talk to me about kind of your own personal usage of AI. I think, for us, everyone's aware, Google is still the lion's share of the search marketplace. It's evolving, right? It's adopted its own version of AI overviews, which is inserted in Gemini. They had tested it a couple of years ago. It didn't go well. They rolled it back. And now, of course, it's here to stay with a lot of the AI overview components. Are you utilizing it yourself? Are you finding you're using the AI overviews, utilize it within Gemini? Are you using a separate tool like Perplexity for your search engine? Are you using OpenAI? Talk to me about that. And maybe some use cases for people in their day-to-day and how they can utilize it a little bit more efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting just to hear you say what you're using, Tyler, because it reminded me we're in kind of two different technology worlds. Because I can tell by what you're saying, you're a Google shop.
Sure.
And we're a Microsoft shop.
Yep.
And so, so just inherently, we're all kind of seeing different flavors of what's out there, and probably occasionally have AI, envy, with certain things you might have or you might have what I have.
Sure.
My usage is frequent. I would say on a daily basis, I'm using AI probably 8 to 10 times. Sometimes for something trivial, sometimes, probably half of those are for something more substantial. And I'm continuously blown away by the new use cases that come up. And that's what I was saying early on, like, you just have to get into this. And then once you start getting into it, you'll go, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can use it for this, or I can use it for that. I'll give a quick example. So, Copilot is integrated into a lot of the Microsoft tools. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to do a survey across our organization to really understand how, just the exact question you just asked. What are you using AI for? Because there's secret usage in any organization, right? Sometimes people can say it. So we wanted to do a survey of our employees across all our departments. And so I thought, well, I'll go out to Microsoft Forums and I'll start writing up this survey. And I had worked with somebody else. They kind of drafted some initial questions. And I go into Microsoft Copilot and said, what do you want to do a survey on? So I went into Forums, and the first thing came up was Copilot in Forums saying, what would you like to do a survey on? And I was like, oh, well, I would like to do a survey on this or this and this and this. And I described it to it. It built the survey. I mean, I've done that before. It was probably, 10, 15 questions. It even, gave suggestions on branching. Like if they say no here, take it with this question.
Yeah.
I mean, it built the whole thing. And I mean, I'm not great at surveys. I would have struggled with exactly how to put these things together. Probably would have
Sure.
called we have a research team. But
Hmm.
anyway, it put it together and I was just like, and 5 minutes later, I had a great survey. Um, so the use cases are just surprising and constant. And so yeah, I mean, I so you get so excited about these little ways that you've used it. The other day we had to justify buying a whole bunch of furniture, and AI gave us, I was like, hey, I need to, tell our CFO why we need to buy all this furniture. And the AI even put in there the depreciation, the straight line depreciation, and how much and I was like, and the CFO approved it right away, right? Because it had done all the thinking. I uploaded image of the furniture. It told me its value. I mean, it was, and so I do think, we're talking today about marketing, but there's
Hmm.
all these other things that sort of happen in our daily lives. This internal survey is not really marketing. The fact I wanted to get more furniture, and get it approved by the CFO. I think just the more you use it, the more you find you've got now this amazing buddy, and that is, I mean, that's honestly how I feel. Like the positive, non-Luddite person in me is just like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted a brilliant companion I can turn to at any moment and ask a question, because I'm not brilliant all the time. I suck sometimes, right?
Uh,
Like I'm good at some things and I'm
sure,
bad at
sure.
others. We all have blind spots. And the fact that I have this companion, that even areas where I think I'm strong, it's like, hey, dude, by the way, you missed something here, right? You need to, I mean, it's pretty amazing to feel like, you've got this just brilliant work companion that's there any moment you want them to be. You're not waiting for them to answer you on Slack or Teams.
The memory component, what you brought up earlier, because that was the thing with OpenAI. They hadn't, it wasn't turned on, wasn't the permanent setting, right? And now learning so much about you. I mean, you're creating your own GPT, you're creating your own chatbot to a certain extent. So learning all those components. But I think the key lesson here, Mark, is just get in, right? And
Yeah.
start testing. And I think that's the big thing with marketing teams, client side agency, is essentially just start establishing use cases. And I think the personal front is compelling because, hey, I had a parking ticket the other day, and I was like, all right, what's my opportunity? Let's screen. I took a photo. I was like, can I fight this?
Right.
And certain things that you're wasting so much time putting together an explanation that can spit out an overview very quickly, and maybe help your cause. We'll see if I win that or not. But I do think there's that angle and really crafting it around, going back to the marketing component, is crafting it around your ICP. For your personal component, is like, hey, using a companion to follow you along. I had an injury recently. It's like, prompt me all of
Yep.
the specific items. And then, Mark, it's funny, we're a Google shop. We want obviously individuals to fixate on Google, but we're also realizing just, generative engine optimization components, and we're obviously really ahead of that as well. But it's just amazing to understand, using the different platforms, and of course, being able to integrate. One of the big things too for all these awareness based queries on Google, it's like they're getting swallowed up by AI overviews, but they're
Yep.
also those listicles, those affiliate based websites. A lot of my friends in the affiliate space aren't doing as well as they would have liked, but you can kind of get off of some of that fluff and get credible sources, utilizing OpenAI, utilizing another GPT, or LLM rather, a lot more efficiently and customize
Yeah.
a lot to you rather than having to dig
Yeah.
through endless amount of content. So
Yeah. And Tyler, one of the things you're bringing up sort of this memory and personalization. I think there's a lot of news recently about how the AI, especially their Chat GPT, made a change on their um, 4 model, where it
mhm.
became very sycophantic.
Yep.
And one of the things I love, and I don't know if all models can do this, but ChatGPT does, where you can basically tell it how you want it to behave.
Mm.
And what I went in and my settings are challenge me always, right? Question what I'm doing. I do not want
Love that.
my AI companion to be agreeable. I want it to be, reasonably disagreeable.
That's a great lesson, because I think, when you're going through the process, it's always, oh, that's great or excellent. You're crushing it, and
Yeah, right.
it's
Yes.
boosting your ego,
Yes.
right? And you're like, oh,
Yeah, totally.
maybe I'm brilliant.
Yes.
I am brilliant. Yeah, it's like off like a
Yep.
one sentence prompt. I think that's one thing. I love that. That's a huge component. thing that we're adopting as well is just being able to, and what we've been talking about in the past. Well, of course, establishing the context within your initial prompt, assigning the role of the GPT.
Yeah, love that.
That's becoming more and more. Yep. It doesn't always have to be an expert, but it's like, and then I think that's also where in like, do not just give me, GPTs are famous for just filling voids of just like arbitrary content or certain things, like push it, ideate, and push back on me, and then have it go. But the big thing that the big unlock is having it interview you to get that end product to be so much more refined. I think one thing that a lot of people are just so obsessed with of just, I can get one prompt and it's going to solve all my issues. It needs to learn, it needs to understand, it needs to grow, it needs to interview you. And that's something that really has been it helped us differentiate and helped our clients differentiate too.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, I actually think I remember over lunch, you were describing this methodology to me, and I've been wanting to adopt that more. I think that's super interesting. It's what I'm hearing, you're basically saying we need to have, we can't be lazy in our relationship with our AIs, right? We can't just, like you said, assume that one shot, prompts are going to get us where we need to, and really thinking it more like, it's almost like what I'm saying, what I'm hearing, what you're saying is almost respect it like a human being.
Sure.
Like, you wouldn't expect to walk in the room and just, one shot ask somebody a question about what you should do on a campaign, right? You'd give it more context. You'd want it to ask you some questions. So I really like that.
And because, again, it's like, oh, you hear all these use cases like, oh, create a proposal for me or write up a couple of things. And it's just like, that's not enough to really push it. And I think a lot of people are just, it gets it 80% there, maybe not even. And they're just like, oh, this is good enough. And a lot of times it is good enough, but really pushing it can allow you to get just so much more out of it to benefit you. Mark, this has been awesome. Really appreciate your time today, and your perspective. With you saying yes to this, you signed up to be a recurring guest for
Nice.
about 5 years. Nothing crazy, once a week. No, but your perspective is awesome.
And 10% of royalties, right?
We negotiated 5%, but
okay, 5, nice.
Well, I think, it would be great to sync up again. I know you and I will grab lunch here sooner than later, but sync up again here in 6 to 12 months and see how some of our conversations maybe changed entirely. We'll see what the legal aspects, what, if Congress gets their act together and pushes anything through. We'll see what that entails too. I'm really curious. And just how your services have evolved, our services, I love the use case component, and we'll continue to go from there. Mark, talk to us about how people can get in touch with you and where they can find Gravity Global.
Sure. It should be easy to find on LinkedIn, Mark Mitton at Gravity Global. And so, yeah, reach out there. I pay attention to my LinkedIn. And we got a fancy new website at Gravity Global. So go check it out and hopefully be impressed. And yeah, if anybody wants to be a part of this journey with us, we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Tyler. All right.
Thanks for listening to Built to Convert. If you're serious about growth, don't just listen. Subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for new episodes that drop straight into your feed. Until next time, keep building.